Beat me in a dance battle and I'll give you $.
A mop crashes across a polished ballet studio floor. 17-year-old Emily Carter freezes in the center of the room, one foot pointed behind her, one hand raised like a dancer caught in a dream. The music stops. A circle of wealthy ballet students stare at her. Then Vanessa Blake, the Academy's star student, laughs and says, "Was the cleaner's daughter just trying to dance?" Emily's mother, Grace Carter, stands by the doorway in her cleaning uniform, holding a bucket. Her voice is small, almost broken, when she whispers, "Emily, come here." But Emily cannot move, because for the first time in her life, the secret she had protected for years is standing exposed beneath bright studio lights. Vanessa steps closer and says, "Since you think you belong here, prove it. Beat me in a dance battle, and I'll give you $500. Lose, and you clean every dancer's shoes for 5 days." The room erupts. Some students laugh. Some lift their phones. Some look away because they know it is cruel, but not enough to stop it. And what no one knows is that a billionaire donor, Charles Whitmore, is watching from the hallway with a retired ballet teacher named Eleanor Hayes. Everyone thinks this is a joke, but by the end of the night, one dance will expose the Academy's cruelest truth, change a poor girl's future, and force one powerful man to make a promise he can never take back. The question is not only whether Emily can dance. The question is why Charles Whitmore, a man known for being cold, private, and almost impossible to move, suddenly cares about a cleaner's daughter. Why does Eleanor Hayes, a woman who spent 40 years training elite dancers, call Emily's movement rare? And why does Vanessa Blake, the girl everyone believes is untouchable, look terrified the moment Emily begins to move? Here's how it all began. Emily Carter was not supposed to be inside the Whitmore Ballet Academy after sunset. At least, not as a dancer. She was allowed inside as the cleaner's daughter, the quiet girl who carried towels, emptied bins, wiped mirrors, and followed her mother from room to room after wealthy families had gone home. She knew the rules without anyone teaching them to her. Do not touch the costumes. Do not stand in front of the mirrors too long. Do not look too interested. And most importantly, never let the students think you want what they have. But wanting is hard to hide when it becomes part of your body. Every evening, while Grace cleaned, Emily listened from the hallway. She learned the rhythm before she learned the language. She did not know the names of every step, but she knew when the music asked the body to rise. She knew when a turn was late. She knew when a dancer was smiling without feeling anything. And in empty rooms, when everyone left, she would take the mop handle like a partner and practice what she had stolen with her eyes. Grace noticed long before Emily knew she had been caught. One night, she stood by the door and watched her daughter turn across the floor in worn sneakers. For a second, Grace did not see the child she was trying to protect from disappointment. She saw herself at 17, before bills, before exhaustion, before life demanded every dream as payment. Grace had once wanted to dance too. She had once saved for lessons, stretched until her muscles shook, and believed that talent could carry a girl somewhere beautiful. Then Emily's father left, rent came due, and beauty became something Grace cleaned after other people finished enjoying it. "Emily," Grace said that night, making her daughter jump. "You need to stop doing that here." Emily lowered the mop. "I'm not hurting anything." Grace stepped inside. "That's not the point." Emily's eyes moved toward the mirrors. "Then what is the point?" Grace looked around the studio, at the expensive floors and the perfect silence. "The point is, places like this let girls like you look in. They don't always let girls like you stay." Emily swallowed the pain in that sentence. "What if I'm good?" Grace's face softened. "Then I'll be even more afraid." That fear was not weakness. It was experience. Grace had worked around wealthy people long enough to understand how they could turn kindness into control and charity into performance. She had seen donors smile for photographs with children whose names they forgot 5 minutes later. She had seen parents speak to cleaners without looking at their faces. She had seen dreams become decoration for people who already owned everything. So when Emily looked at ballet with hunger in her eyes, Grace did not see only hope. She saw a door that might open just wide enough to break her child's heart. Vanessa Blake came from the opposite world. She arrived at the academy in a black luxury car, stepped out with perfect posture, and carried herself like someone who had never been told no by anyone who mattered. Her father sat on one of the academy's fundraising boards. Her mother funded costumes for the spring showcase. Vanessa was talented, but talent had made her proud instead of grateful. She was used to being first, praised, watched, and protected. When she noticed Emily watching from the hallway, she did not see a girl with a dream. She saw an insult. At first, Vanessa's cruelty was quiet. A small laugh when Emily passed. A comment about dirty sneakers. A warning not to smudge the mirror. Then it became public. Careful, Vanessa once said in front of 3 other students. If you stare long enough, you might start thinking you're one of us. Emily said nothing. That silence annoyed Vanessa more than any reply could have. There are people who need their targets to beg, cry, or fight back, so the cruelty feels powerful. Emily did none of those things. She lowered her eyes, kept walking, and remembered every step. The night everything changed began like any other. Grace was assigned to clean Studio 3 after an advanced rehearsal. Emily had stayed late because the bus was delayed and because, secretly, she wanted 5 minutes alone with the music. The room was empty. The mirrors were clear. A speaker had been left on. Emily picked up the mop, pressed play, and let the music enter her body. She was not trying to perform. She was trying to breathe. For a few minutes, the girl who carried trash bags and counted coins for bus fare disappeared. In her place stood someone weightless. Then the door opened. Vanessa and 4 students stepped in first. They had returned for a forgotten bag, but what they found was better than a bag. Emily, caught mid-turn. The mop slipped from her hand. The sound cut through the room. For 1 second, everyone stared. Then Vanessa smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had found a weapon. Well, she said, this is embarrassing. Emily reached for the mop. I was just cleaning. Vanessa laughed. No, you were pretending. Grace appeared at the door seconds later, breathless from the hallway. Emily, come here now. But Vanessa was already enjoying the audience. More students gathered near the entrance. Someone whispered, isn't that the cleaner's daughter? Another voice said, she was actually dancing. Emily felt shame crawl up her neck, but beneath it came something stronger. Anger. Vanessa pointed toward the floor and said, since you love our studio so much, let's see what you can do without a mop. Grace stepped forward. Leave her alone. Vanessa looked at Grace's uniform, then back at Emily. Or what? She'll report me to housekeeping. That was the moment Charles Whitmore stopped in the hallway. He had heard the laughter before he saw the girl. Charles was not there for students. He was there for a private meeting about funding, reputation, and expansion. He was the kind of man people lowered their voices around. But beside him, Eleanor Hayes stopped walking too. Eleanor had spent her life around ballet. She had seen prodigies, frauds, disciplined students, lazy stars, and children pushed too hard by ambitious parents. What she saw in Emily's frozen posture made her eyes sharpen. She whispered, wait. Inside the studio, Vanessa made the offer. $500 if Emily won. 5 days cleaning everyone's boots if she lost. Grace said no before Emily could breathe. My daughter is not entertainment. Vanessa shrugged. Then she should stop performing. Grace grabbed Emily's wrist gently. We're leaving. Then Vanessa said the sentence that changed everything. Maybe your mother should have taught you how to stay in your place. Emily stopped. Grace closed her eyes as if the words had struck her physically. Emily slowly turned back. Her voice was quiet, but every person heard it. Play the music. Grace whispered, please don't do this. Emily looked at her mother's tired hands. The hands that had cleaned floors so Emily could eat. The hands that had held her through fevers, fear, and every unpaid bill. She insulted you, Emily said. Grace shook her head. I can survive insults. Emily's eyes filled, but she did not cry. You shouldn't have to. Vanessa clapped once. Perfect. Let's make this quick. Students formed a loose circle. No one realized that Charles and Eleanor had stepped into the room. No one realized the real judge of the night was no longer Vanessa. Vanessa danced first. And she was good. That mattered. If she had been talentless, the moment would have meant less. But Vanessa was trained, sharp, controlled, and confident. Her turns were clean. Her arms were elegant. Her face carried the polished expression of someone used to applause. When she finished, her friends cheered as if the result had already been decided. Vanessa walked past Emily and whispered, don't embarrass your mother more than you already have. Emily looked down at her sneakers. For one awful second, she almost walked away. Then Eleanor Hayes spoke from the edge of the room. Let the girl hear the music. The room quieted. Emily stood alone in the center. The first notes began. She did not move. Vanessa smirked. She doesn't even know when to start. Eleanor's reply was almost too soft to hear. No. She is waiting. Emily heard the count. 1, 2, 3. Her first step was small. The second trembled. The third changed the room. She did not dance like Vanessa. She had no perfect training to hide behind. But she had something that made people stop laughing. She had feeling. She moved as if the music was not outside her, but inside the part of her life no one had ever bothered to ask about. Every turn carried a story. Every recovery from imbalance felt like survival. She stumbled once, and Vanessa almost smiled, but Emily caught herself and continued. That was when Charles leaned forward. That was when Eleanor's face changed. Emily was not copying what she had seen. She was translating it through hunger, memory, shame, courage, and longing. Vanessa had danced like a winner. Emily danced like someone who had spent years being told no and had finally found a language no one could interrupt. When the music ended, Emily stood breathing hard, her chest rising and falling, her eyes fixed on the floor. No one moved. The silence was longer than applause would have been. Then Eleanor Hayes clapped once. Charles followed. Slowly, the room joined them. Grace ran to Emily and pulled her close. Emily whispered, "Did I do wrong?" Grace held her tighter. "No, baby. You did beautiful." Vanessa stood pale and furious, realizing the worst part was not losing. The worst part was that everyone had seen the difference between performance and truth. If you're enjoying Emily's journey so far, make sure you subscribe because her story is only getting started. Charles stepped forward. "What is your name?" Emily looked at him carefully. "Emily Carter." "Who trained you?" "No one." Vanessa cut in, desperate. "Exactly. She isn't trained." Eleanor turned toward her. "And still, she made this room feel something you have never made it feel." Vanessa's mouth opened, then closed. Charles looked at Grace. "Mrs. Carter, your daughter has a gift." Grace's arms tightened around Emily. "My daughter has a mother." Charles nodded. "Yes, and that may be the most important thing protecting her right now." Then Charles made the offer that turned the night from humiliation into a storm. "I will fund her training. Full scholarship. Academic support. Medical care. Transportation. Whatever she needs." The room reacted. Vanessa looked horrified. Grace looked terrified. Emily looked as if she had not understood the words. Charles continued, and his voice lowered. "And if time proves trust can be built, I would consider it an honor to become part of her life in a permanent way." Grace stepped back as if he had crossed a line no money could erase. "No," she said. "Absolutely not." Charles did not argue. That surprised everyone. Grace's voice shook, but it did not weaken. "You don't get to watch my child dance once and decide she belongs to you." Charles looked down. "You are right." Grace blinked. She had expected persuasion, pressure, maybe even offense. He gave her none. "I had a daughter," he said quietly. "She loved ballet. I did not watch her enough when she was alive. That does not give me any claim over yours. But it does give me a reason to recognize what I almost missed again." Emily stared at him. Grace's expression remained guarded. Eleanor stepped beside Grace. "A scholarship can be protection if it is structured correctly. It can also become a cage if the wrong adults control it." Charles reached into his coat and placed a card on the bench. "This is Judge Raymond Mercer. Speak to him before you speak to me. Ask what I can and cannot do. Nothing happens tonight. Nothing happens without you." Grace did not take the card at first. Emily looked from the card to her mother. "Mama," she whispered. Grace finally picked it up, not as acceptance, but as evidence. Vanessa tried to leave quietly, but Emily stopped her. "You forgot something." Vanessa turned. "What?" Emily's voice trembled, but she held it steady. "The $500. A few students looked down. Vanessa's face burned. She pulled the money from her bag and pushed it toward Emily. Emily did not take it yet, and apologized to my mother. Vanessa stared at her. Eleanor's voice came sharp. "You heard her." Vanessa swallowed. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Carter." Grace looked at her for a long second. "Be sorry enough to become better." Only then did Emily take the money. That night, the bus ride home felt longer than usual. The city lights passed across the window. Emily held the envelope of money in her lap. Grace held Charles Whitmore's card in her coat pocket, where it seemed heavier than rent, groceries, and fear combined. Emily finally whispered, "Are you angry with me?" Grace did not answer immediately. "No," she said. "I am scared." Emily looked at her. "Of Mr. Whitmore?" Grace stared out the window. Of what happens when powerful people decide your life is interesting. Emily lowered her eyes. I just wanted to dance. At home, their apartment looked exactly the same. Small table, old couch, bills stacked beside a chipped mug. But nothing felt the same. Emily placed the $500 on the table as if it might disappear. Grace removed the card and laid it beside the money. For a long time, both of them stared at the two objects. One was a prize won through humiliation. The other was a door no one knew whether to open. Emily finally said, "You used to dance, didn't you?" Grace's face changed. "Who told you that?" "I found the old shoes." Grace sat down slowly. That was another life. Emily sat opposite her. "Why did you stop?" Grace laughed once, but there was no humor in it. "Because rent doesn't care about dreams. Because your father left. Because I had you. And loving you meant choosing what kept us alive." Emily's eyes filled. "Did you regret it?" Grace looked at her daughter and answered with painful honesty. "Some nights. Never you. But the dream, yes." Emily reached for her hand. "Maybe I can carry it for both of us." Grace closed her eyes. That sentence hurt because it sounded beautiful and dangerous at the same time. The next morning, Grace called Judge Mercer from the hallway outside their apartment. She expected a man hired to protect Charles Whitmore. Instead, she heard a tired, steady voice that asked her what she wanted, what Emily wanted, and whether anyone had pressured them. Grace told him everything. The bet, the insult, the dance, the offer, the mention of becoming family. Mercer listened without interrupting. Then he said, "Mr. Whitmore cannot take your daughter. He cannot adopt her without consent and legal process. He cannot use money to override your rights. But he can create a protected trust for training and education." Grace gripped the phone. "And if he changes his mind?" Mercer replied. "Then the trust must be written so his mood cannot punish the child." That sentence made Grace breathe for the first time all morning. Mercer continued, "If you meet him, do it in a neutral place. Bring anyone you trust. Sign nothing that day. Ask every question twice if you need to." Grace almost smiled. "You don't sound like his lawyer." Mercer said, "Good. Because in this matter, someone needs to sound like the child's protection." That was the first time Grace considered going. 3 days later, they met in a community dance studio. Not the academy. Grace insisted. Charles arrived without cameras, without assistants, without Vanessa, and without the academy board. Eleanor Hayes was there. Judge Mercer was there. Emily sat close to Grace, her hands folded in her lap. Mercer placed the papers on the table. "This is not adoption. This is scholarship support. Grace keeps full parental rights. Emily receives training, education assistance, transportation, health support, and legal protection. Her name, image, and story cannot be used publicly without written permission." Grace read slowly. Charles waited. Emily looked at Charles. "Do I have to call you Dad?" The question struck the room. Charles's answer came softly. "No. Do I have to live with you?" "No. Do I have to dance for your rich friends?" Charles looked at Grace before answering. "No. You dance when you are ready, where your teacher approves, and where your mother agrees." Emily asked one final question. "Then what do you get?" Charles was quiet. "Responsibility," he said, "and the chance to do one decent thing without turning it into a show." Grace studied him. For the first time, she did not look away. Training began the next week, and it was nothing like Emily imagined. Ballet was not floating. It was pain, discipline, repetition, correction, and the slow breaking of bad habits. Eleanor Hayes did not treat Emily like a miracle. She treated her like a student. Again, she would say. Emily would turn. Again, Emily would fall. Again. One afternoon, Emily cried. "I thought I was good." Eleanor stood over her, calm and firm. "You are gifted. That is not the same as good. The gift is the door. Work is how you earn the room." Emily wiped her face and stood again. Grace watched every lesson she could. Sometimes she watched with pride. Sometimes with guilt. Sometimes with fear. Charles came occasionally and stood at the back, never interrupting. One evening, Emily noticed him and snapped. "Why do you keep watching me?" Charles answered, "Because I failed to watch someone once." Emily looked away. "I'm not your daughter." Charles nodded. "No, you are Grace Carter's daughter. That is why I have to earn the right to even stand in the room." Grace heard that from across the studio. She said nothing, but she remembered it. The Academy board did not like the arrangement. They wanted interviews, donor dinners, scholarship announcements, a perfect story to raise money. A public relations advisor told Charles, "People will love this. The cleaner's daughter was discovered by the academy. It humanizes the institution." Grace overheard enough to step into the room. "My daughter is not here to humanize anyone." The advisor smiled politely. "Mrs. Carter, visibility creates opportunity." Grace replied. "And silence protects children from adults who clap too loudly." Charles turned to the advisor and said, "No interviews. No donor events. No story package." That decision cost him. He made it anyway. 6 months later, Emily stepped onto a small stage for her first real showcase. Vanessa sat in the audience, quiet, no longer laughing. Grace sat in the front row with both hands pressed together. Charles sat behind her. Eleanor stood near the curtain and whispered to Emily before the music began, "Do not dance to prove them wrong. Dance because you are free." Emily nodded. The lights came up. The music started. This time, she had training. Her lines were cleaner. Her balance was stronger. But the feeling that had first silenced the studio was still there. When Emily finished, the applause came like a wave. Grace cried openly. Charles lowered his head, as if the moment was too much to look at directly. Vanessa approached Emily afterward. For once, there was no pride in her face. "I was cruel because I was scared," Vanessa said. Emily looked at her. "Scared of what?" Vanessa swallowed. "That you had something I couldn't buy." Emily held her gaze. "Then don't become the kind of person who ruins money." Vanessa nodded, and for the first time, Emily believed she might mean it. That night, Charles brought Grace a letter. A national ballet school had requested Emily for evaluation. Grace stared at the paper until the words blurred. "She's only 17, she whispered. Charles nodded. "Yes. This world will eat her if we let it." "Then we do not let it," he said. Emily walked in and saw their faces. "Is it bad?" Grace pulled her close. "No. It's big." Emily looked at Charles. "Are you still keeping your promise?" Charles's voice shook just slightly. "Yes." Emily nodded. "Then keep it slowly." The morning after the showcase, Emily Carter woke before sunrise, but not because she wanted to. Her phone would not stop vibrating. At first, she thought it was her alarm. Then she saw the flood of messages. Unknown numbers. Social media requests. Classmates she barely knew. Even old neighbors from her apartment building. Her hands shook as she opened one of them. It was a video. The dance. Her dance. Recorded from the academy that night Vanessa had challenged her. It had been uploaded online without her permission. The caption read, "Cleaner's daughter humiliates rich ballet star." Emily sat up so fast, she almost dropped the phone. Her stomach tightened. She clicked another post. This one showed her mother in uniform beside her. Thousands of comments. Some praising her. Some mocking her. Some calling her a miracle. Some calling her charity. Grace walked into the kitchen in her robe and saw Emily's face. "What happened?" Emily turned the phone toward her. Grace's face drained of color. "Who did this?" Emily whispered, "Someone from the academy." Within hours, the story spread far beyond the academy walls. Local blogs picked it up. Then national pages. Then television stations started calling. Emily's face was everywhere. The same girl who had spent her whole life unnoticed was suddenly being watched by millions. Grace sat at the kitchen table, gripping her coffee so tightly her knuckles turned white. "This is exactly what I was afraid of," she said. Emily stared at the screen. "But people like it." Grace slammed her hand on the table. "It doesn't matter if they like it. They don't know you. They don't know us." Emily flinched. Grace softened immediately. "Baby, listen to me. Fame is fast. It doesn't ask permission. And it doesn't always leave gently." Before Emily could answer, the phone rang. It was Charles Whitmore. Grace answered first. "Tell me you had nothing to do with this." Charles's voice came through cold and sharp. "I did not. Victor did." Grace's eyes narrowed. "Victor? My advisor," Charles said. "He leaked the footage to the press without my approval." Grace stood up so fast her chair scraped. "You promised me." Charles did not defend himself. "I know." Grace's voice cracked. "You told me she would be protected." Charles was quiet for a second, then said, "Meet me at the academy. Today. I am fixing this." Grace almost hung up, but Emily touched her hand. "Mom." Grace looked at her daughter, at the fear and confusion in her eyes, and nodded once. "One meeting," she said. At the academy, the mood had changed completely. The same students who ignored Emily now stared like she was a celebrity. Some whispered. Some smiled too hard. Some looked jealous. Emily hated it immediately. As she walked down the hallway, she heard one girl say, "That's her. The cleaning girl." Another whispered, "No, she's the charity girl now." Emily kept walking, but every word hit like a bruise. Inside Charles's office, Victor was already there. Calm, polished, unbothered. Grace stormed in first. "You leaked my daughter's story?" Victor folded his hands. "It was good publicity." Grace nearly laughed. "Publicity?" Victor nodded. "Emily's story is powerful. People connect to struggle." Emily's face hardened. "My life isn't content." Victor looked at her. "Everything is content once people care enough." Charles stood. His voice was low, but dangerous. "You're fired." Victor blinked. "Charles, be reasonable. You used a child against her mother's wishes." Victor tried again. "This could have raised millions." Charles stepped closer. "And what would it have cost her?" Victor had no answer. Grace watched carefully. Charles turned to her. "He's gone. The footage will be taken down where possible. Legal notices are already being sent." Grace crossed her arms. "The damage is already done." Charles nodded. "I know." Emily should have felt relief, but she didn't. At school, the attention only got worse. Reporters waited outside the gates. Students either praised her or mocked her. There was no normal anymore. In class, she overheard someone say, "She only got here because Charles Whitmore felt sorry for her." That one hurt the most, because part of her feared it might be true. That afternoon, during training, Emily's concentration broke. She missed turns, lost balance. Eleanor Hayes stopped the music. "What is happening to you?" Emily wiped her eyes angrily. "Everyone thinks I'm a pity project." Eleanor folded her arms. "Do you?" Emily didn't answer. Eleanor stepped closer. "Answer me." Emily's voice cracked. "I don't know anymore." That night, Emily searched online and found an article about Charles Whitmore's daughter, Lily Whitmore, a ballet prodigy, dead at 16 in a car accident. Emily stared at the picture. Lily looked almost her age. Same determined eyes. Same posture. Suddenly Charles's interest made more sense, and less sense at the same time. The next day she confronted him. "Am I just replacing her?" Charles looked stunned. "What?" Emily held up the article. "Lily, is that why you're helping me?" Charles sat down heavily. For the first time, he looked tired. Really tired. "No," he said. Emily's eyes stayed hard. "Then why?" Charles looked at the photo on his desk. "Because when I lost her, I realized too late how little of her life I had actually seen. I don't help you because you remind me of Lily. I help you because I recognized what I failed to protect before." Emily wanted to believe him, but doubt had already taken root. Then came the Academy's winter selection. Only 3 dancers would be chosen for the National Youth Audition. Emily was expected to make it. Vanessa was expected to lead it. But during rehearsal, disaster struck. Emily's shoe strap snapped. She fell hard. The room gasped. Pain shot through her ankle as she hit the floor. Eleanor rushed to her side. Vanessa stood frozen. Emily reached for her shoe. Then her heart stopped. The strap had not broken from wear. It had been cut. Deliberately. Emily stared at the damaged strap. Months of training. Months of sacrifice. Months of pain. And now her dream might be over before it had truly begun. Then her eyes stopped on someone. And for the first time all season, Vanessa Blake looked afraid. Do you think Vanessa did it? Or is someone else trying to destroy Emily's future? Do you think Emily will still make it to the National Youth Audition, or will she lose everything she worked for? Let me know in the comments, and don't miss part 2. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and like this story. It means a lot to us.